Welcome everybody to another BIM broadcast. We're going to have a wonderful show today. We have Jim Lynch joining us from Autodesk. We're going to talk about some construction information, some issues in construction today. So we'll kind of kick that off in a minute. Now, for all of you who are on the stream today, most likely you're subscribed to BIM broadcast already, and of course you've probably hit the bell to be notified when we go live when that does happen. Now, if you haven't done that yet, if you're watching the recording in the future and you're like, man, I wish I could have caught this show live and interacted with the guest and with Shawn, please subscribe to our channel, hit the bell, and when we're going live, we keep an eye on that chat window. In fact, I'm looking over there on a regular basis here just to kind of see if you guys are talking back to us, and we want to hear from you. It makes the show more interesting and interactive when you start asking us questions. So, kind of keep that in mind. Feel free to do that. Let me actually get my chat window popped out here so I can see it right in front of my face while I'm talking with Jim today. So with that, let me introduce our guest. Today we've got Jim Lynch, VP of Construction at Autodesk. Jim, welcome to the show.
Shawn, thank you. Happy to be here on a Friday afternoon.
Excellent. Yeah, happy Friday, right? TGIF, as it were.
Absolutely.
So, Jim, let's kind of start this off a little bit. I like to do this with each of my guests. I like to know a little bit about where you came from and how you got to where you are now, so people kind of can identify with, where their career was and is, and kind of where your career was and is. So, how did you get your start in the industry of BIM or AEC in general?
Right. Well, let me go back a little bit before that. My background, my degree, of course, is actually in computer science. I graduated with a degree in computer science, but I've worked in the CAD industry ever since graduating. I won't give the date, but it was a long time ago, back in the 80s.
Sure.
And I've worked in the CAD industry, both on the manufacturing side, even on the electronic design automation side, and then of course, for the last 18 years on the architecture, engineering, and construction, or AEC side. So I joined Autodesk in 1997, and I spent 3 years in their manufacturing group. I was responsible for development of a technology we still have in the market today called Inventor for sure. Mechanical design or manufacturing design.
Nice.
And then in 2000, the company actually had done an acquisition. I was living in Oregon working for Autodesk at the time, and the company had done an acquisition back here on the East Coast, and they realized I was losing my Boston accent, so they asked me if I would move back to Boston and integrate this company and
Nice.
Integrate the acquisition into the company. And it turned out the acquisition was a company that was focused on the AEC market, a company called Sofdesk. And what Sofdesk did is they built vertical applications, AEC applications on top of AutoCAD. So things like Civil 3D, Architectural Desktop, those things really all, the seeds of those products really came from the Sofdesk acquisition.
And back in the days of Lisp.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly.
Yep.
And so that was back in that was in 2000, and then I've been part of AEC at Autodesk ever since in a variety of different roles. I ran product development, I ran product management. I actually ran industry marketing for AEC for the company for about 7 years, and then 5 years ago, I returned to my roots on the product development side. Yeah. So now I'm responsible for the construction portfolio. But of course, for most of my career, AEC career at Autodesk, I was deeply involved in the design and engineering side. I was front and center when we did the Revit acquisition as well as other acquisitions. So, I have a deep admiration, if you will, for the AEC industry, and I'm really excited about my latest responsibility, where I've been asked to focus my efforts solely on the construction portfolio. So it's pretty exciting.
Awesome. So being the VP of construction, what does that actually entail now? You said you're leading up the construction portfolio for Autodesk. I imagine a lot of that's on the BIM 360 front.
Exactly. So so I have a global development organization. My team is really responsible for the design and development, the product management of the construction portfolio here, which is a couple of things. First and foremost, at the center of that is absolutely BIM 360.
Right.
But we're also doing a lot of interesting work on the what we call the industrialization of construction side, and I think we'll probably talk about that later, so I won't go into too much detail. But it's the idea of how do we introduce more manufacturing-based approaches into the construction industry. I also have some work going on to drive greater collaboration across project teams with a project called Project Quantum. So those things are all
Quantum. That's a fun tool.
Exactly, in my organization, as are things like Navisworks, et cetera. Now, what's interesting, what I'm not responsible for, but when you talk about construction, you have to really remember that products like AutoCAD, products like Revit, a lot of our customers on the construction side use AutoCAD. Many of them use Revit, and so while I'm not responsible for leading the development of those organizations, I certainly work very closely with the Revit organization, which I managed for many years. So I have a lot of insiders there that I can talk to.
Exactly.
But I work very closely with them to make sure that they're understanding the requirements of our authoring tools in the construction world.
Yeah. So now, just so you guys all know, the viewers of this show today, we're not here to kind of really sell tools, right? I'm not trying to sell you on a specific product. I'm just trying to show you and talk with you about, in general, about what's available in the world of BIM and kind of what some of the advancements are. So I've invited Jim on today to talk about specifically construction and some of the issues that kind of crop up. So while Autodesk products will be mentioned, of course, I mean, Jim works for Autodesk. Why would he not mention his own products? That's expected. But it's, the goal is to kind of educate you guys as to what some of the possibilities exist out there in market. So now, Jim, you're focusing on construction now, and I imagine you interface a lot with different construction companies out there in the market, right? You're sitting there in their offices day in, day out, talking with them face to face, helping them kind of parse their problems. What are some of the problems that you are commonly seeing in the world of construction right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the theme that you hear, that I hear from all of our customers, construction customers around the globe, is pretty consistent in terms of, it's hard to predict outcomes. It's hard to really get your arms around project schedule, project costs. So, this idea of low predictability and low productivity, right? There's a lot of rework. There's a lot of waste in terms of materials. So that, the low productivity, the low, the challenges with predicting outcomes, and then overall reducing risk. I think those are the three things that just come up in every discussion. So my customers tell us that, hey, if you could help us predict outcomes on a construction project better, if you could help us better understand schedule impacts, cost impacts, and help us overall reduce the risk of the project, that would be significant. But I think those are the themes that I consistently hear.
Right. So now in a real world, in an ideal world, we'd have a project where the project is designed from all teams. It's fully 100% coordinated, gets to the site, the construction team starts to build stuff. There's no change orders and there's no conflicts, right? And we kind of bid projects based on an ideal world with the understanding that there's going to be problems. And so there's a lot of overhead, like guesstimation built in. And the goal here is to kind of make that a bit more predictable. And
exactly.
Exactly. So, how has this particular issue changed over time? How have you seen this get to where we are today? I mean, we've been building buildings since the beginning of time, mud and sticks all the way through, the Roman era great cathedrals, through some of the steel back in the 20s that we've seen, those fantastic structures, and now today with these fantastic structures. But how has this particular issue changed over time?
Well, it's interesting. It's a good question, Shawn. I think, the issues of predictability, productivity, reduce the risk. I think those things have been around for a long, long time. What's interesting is, I've read data recently that suggests that the construction industry is is very, very low on the productivity list in terms of other industries here in the U.S. and around the globe. And there was one study I read that said, it's only more productive than the gaming and fishing industries. Now,
Wow.
you can take that with a grain of salt. I know I certainly do. I mean, I
Sure.
read one study that said, productivity in construction today is worse than it was, in the 60s. Again, I think you can take those studies. Those studies are interesting, but I think if you step back from that, that I don't want to call it noise because I think there's something to it. But if you step back, I think the issues of predictability, productivity, risk have been around since, for a very, very long time. But I
Right.
think what's making it more visible today and will make it more visible is if you think about some of the predictions around populations, right? I've read that over the next 20 years, the world population is expected to grow by more than 2 billion people. And,
It's a lot of
and by the
people.
way, the majority of these people, are moving to the cities, are
Right.
moving to cities. So, some say that we should be building 1,000 buildings a day to be able to support this growth. So if you just think of the demand on buildings and infrastructure, this idea of low productivity, lack of predictability, high risk, the same old methods that got us to where we are. There's just no way that's going to get us to where we need to be if we're going to address the demand over the next 20 years. So, I think the industry is really crying out for or calling for, the need for more progressive thinking, more innovation, to help address these challenges as we move forward.
Right. So, like, this is obviously a problem, and your job is to come up with solutions on this. And so today we're going to kind of talk about some of the tools that might be potential answers to some of these problems, right?
Sure,
I'm
absolutely.
going to switch this view here. We're going to take a look at that slide that you'd sent me that kind of talks about some of the tool set and some of the kind of flow of what the tools are for Autodesk here. I'm going to let you talk to this a little bit, and we'll talk here like what tools are in use right now that are kind of helping to improve some of this workflow. What are people beginning to use, and what's Autodesk kind of got on the horizon coming up that's going to make this some of these problems less impactful on the construction process.
Right. Okay. Well, I think, if you step back and consider what the, cloud computing and mobile technology has done, um, to the world of construction, it's pretty impressive. 7 years ago, it would be challenging to go to a construction site and see a project team, a project manager using an iPad to capture an issue or to look at a model. But today, again, thanks to the ubiquitous nature of the cloud and mobile computing or mobile technology, project teams can get the information they need, when they need it, where they need it. So there's no more trudging back to the construction trailer to bring up that, to grab a roll of drawings, to understand an issue, then to get on the phone, to call the person who you think is responsible. Now you
Right.
can do all that right from the project site itself. From, if you're on the fourth floor of this, 20-story commercial project and you see an issue, you can capture that issue and quickly share it with the team.
Right.
And so I think, for us, what we're looking at is how do we make, we're looking at this from a couple of different angles. One being, how do we make project teams on the job site more productive? How do we get them the information they need when they need it? How do we help them better collaborate? And ultimately then drive more predictability and greater outcomes. And then the other way we look at it is on the pre-construction planning side, which is, how do we help project teams find issues before they start digging, if you will,
Right.
to kind of weed out those problems before they are created. So for us, our offering, for example, BIM 360 has a couple of different components, and you can see it up here on the screen. We actually look at it from, I just talked about the two in the middle, the field execution and pre-construction planning. But the fact of the matter is it really goes all the way back to design and the ability to do better collaboration during the design process, right? So products like collaboration for Revit allow project teams to collaborate more, more effectively, more efficiently, if you will, on that digital model. So as it carries over into construction, it's kind of right the first time.
Right.
It pulls into pre-construction where things like clash detection and constructability, studies are done. You start to understand initial schedules, initial costs, and then drives that over to field execution. And so, from an Autodesk perspective, our solution there is BIM 360. And of course, that's all built on an open platform that we call Autodesk Forge. Longer term, where we're going with BIM 360 is moving that data, moving that project information into into operations, if you will. So handing that data over to the owner, to the facilities team to then help them, kind of be ready to operate the facility day one because they have the latest information in terms of assets, et cetera.
Right. And it's going to be great because, in a system like that where you have the flow of information just continuing, it's not like that old sawtooth diagram we've seen in the past where the information builds up and then sharply drops off when the next team gets their hands on it and builds up again. I mean, especially when the building owner gets it. Walking into a brand new facility, they may not have been on site much during construction. They don't know anything about what's going on inside the walls. Having a BIM, a building information model that's at their disposal with intelligent tools all integrated, that could be a real fantastic service to offer to the final client, which is ultimately why we're building buildings in the first place, is for the final client.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a great point. In fact, one of the things we just announced, we just introduced actually a couple of weeks ago was our next generation BIM 360. When we started building BIM 360 several years ago, a lot of the components, a lot of those capabilities, if you will, came from different acquisitions. So you had Vela, we acquired a company called Vela, which ultimately became BIM 360 Field. We acquired a company called Glue, which became BIM 360 Glue.
Right.
And there's a number of those different services or capabilities, if you will. So what the next generation BIM 360 does is all of those services are now integrated on a common platform.
Right.
So there's a very nice, clean flow of information, two-way flow of information from pre-construction planning all the way over to handover and operations.
Yeah, so instead of using a whole, different company, different sets of tools, you're using a company with integrated tools. And this whole last, I wouldn't call it a rebranding or restructuring, but this newest release, the newest generation of BIM 360 was basically a more complete interoperability plan with all of those individual acquisitions. Obviously, Jim mentioned earlier in the show, he came from a company, Sofdesk, and helped with the integration of Sofdesk into Autodesk. Autodesk has been based on acquisitions for a very long time. They've purchased great technology or good technology and helped make it better and much more interoperable. So, in this case, the new BIM 360 environment is going to be pretty powerful. Jim, should we jump over and take a look at just a couple of the tools in there real quick and talk about
Sure.
What is the new offering, the new branding of the BIM 360 environment? I think I'm actually on an incorrect tab here. I was going to start over here. So if you guys want to know more about BIM 360, and maybe you haven't begun to look at it yet, maybe you're kind of just using Revit on your own network and you haven't focused much in the BIM 360 platform. I understand that. But let's take a look at kind of what is possible. Not that I'm trying to make a sales job here. I'm just kind of showing you what's out there so you understand what the different tools are in case you want to investigate them. So the website is bim360.autodesk.com right here. So you can go to BIM 360, you can kind of start taking a look at it, and this is kind of your portal to everything else in the BIM 360 toolset. Now, inside there, if you go to the middle portion here, products, you'll kind of start to see some stuff. And this, Jim, is where I was mentioning earlier. I might make a joke at Autodesk's expense. The products here, when I expanded this list, I was like, oh, it's going to be an alphabetical list. But no, in typical Autodesk fashion, the list is not alphabetical. And then I thought, oh, it's in the order in which I might use them in a project process. No, it's actually not entirely in that order either. So I kind of wanted to pull up the way that I see these tools being used. And Jim, of course, this is relatively new to me. The names have changed in a couple of cases. Like I believe field became, what is it, layout? No, which was field?
Build.
Field.
Yeah.
Build, yeah, build. Thank you.
Yeah.
So field is now build. 360 team used to be 360 team. Now it's 360 design, I believe.
Yes, exactly.
And
So far, so good.
Yeah, there's a few others in the mix. I think Glue stayed the same name, Doc stayed the same name. Plan is actually a newish tool to me. I thought that was, I looked at it myself and I started to investigate it. So I'm going to give sort of my theory of these 7 different BIM 360 tools, how they kind of work into the workflow. I pulled up tabs on the top there and I kind of look at them in the order of how I see them used in a project. And Jim, please feel free to jump in and correct me if I misspeak. So what
Absolutely.
I'm seeing here is, first off, BIM 360 Docs being a great foundation for the information exchange. This is beyond just your Revit model, because this is documentation, right? It's Word docs, it's PDFs, it's other kinds of periphery that goes along with the project for communication. That's the docs environment. It does communicate with the BIM 360 plan area here. Actually, I'll get to the build area here, but I see plan kind of coming in a little bit next, right? This is a project and process planning type tool from what I was reading. It allows you to kind of get project teams on board and scheduled. And this isn't necessarily just construction planning the way that I see it. It's also project planning and team alignment. Is that about right, Jim? Do I have that right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. It's really, it's providing tools to enable our customers to embrace, lean construction processes and practices. Yeah, absolutely.
And that whole concept, right, doesn't start after the design's done. Lean construction is before the design even begins. So I kind of talked docs first because you're going to have information that's exchanged before you necessarily begin your plan, but then you jump into planning. You kind of plan the project out as a team, you talk about it, and then you can begin your design. And this is the BIM 360 design side, which used to be again called BIM 360 team. This is where your models are able to be stored. And I was looking on here, I saw another thing, something about, where was it? I forgot where it was. I saw something that said BIM models in the cloud, and I was about to make a joke about that because your building information models are in the cloud apparently.
Hey, I want to just say, my team does not build the website. So.
I totally understand that. I get it.
No, I'm kidding. Joking aside. So let me just add a couple of things about BIM 360 design.
Yeah.
You mentioned team for sure. That's part of it. But I think what's equally, or perhaps even more compelling, is a couple of things. Of course, collaboration for Revit is now part of BIM 360 design. And we introduced a new set of capabilities to help project teams collaborate and track milestones and deliverables. And we worked with a handful of customers to build out that capability, and it was a sizable investment for us, and some really, really compelling capabilities when it comes to sharing and tracking project milestones and deliverables. So BIM 360 design is actually a really strong, powerful set of capabilities.
Yep, absolutely. So then the next tool after the design, not is necessarily complete, but while the design is progressing, the next tool that might come into play here would be Glue, where the different construction teams and design teams can get together and kind of coordinate their project. I mean, you can kind of think of this like Navisworks for the cloud, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. In fact, it now shares the same Clash, capabilities, the same Clash engine, if you will, as Navisworks. In fact, the team working on Glue is the same team that works on Navisworks. So a lot of similarities there, and hopefully that smooths the process out.
Yep, absolutely. There's another new tool here, which is this isn't the new tool, the Build. This is the one that used to be called Field, BIM 360 Field. So this is when you're on the construction site, going through construction, kind of tracking any issues, kind of handling RFIs, stuff like that through the field or build environment, right?
Correct. Exactly right. Exactly right. And I think, I would almost say that, BIM 360 Build, which a couple of weeks ago was BIM 360 Field, that's kind of the cornerstone. That's what really got us started,
right.
In construction site project management. And, we're really excited about the next generation BIM 360 Build. We think it's extremely powerful.
Yeah.
And we think our customers are going to really like it.
Yeah, I think so too. In fact, one of the interesting features I found, I used to be a contractor before I started working at CTC, a small general contractor. I wasn't like the Mortensons of the world. That wasn't my role. But still, the ability, when you run into a design issue or a question or something, a picture's worth 1,000 words, and instead of waiting a few days with the BIM 360 build system with an iPad, you can walk up, take a picture of something, redline it, document it, send it back to the team. They can respond back to you while you're on site and handle issues much more rapidly. So just from a communication standpoint, I think it's a fantastic tool there. And to keep that information tracked. It's not like it's just an email that's lost. Now it's tracked in the system, and you can understand more about that project. So
exactly.
There's also this other tool here, BIM 360 Layout, which is basically a tool set that can help with sort of the on-site total station point layouts, making sure your columns and your embedments are all in the right place, making sure your conduit and your HVAC controls are all in the right spot, before pouring a floor, laying out all the electrical conduit in a floor. I mean, this tool here can be a great tool set to kind of help with that process as well.
Well said. I have nothing to add. You you know this tool set better than I do.
And then you mentioned that there's a tool set that's coming, and actually for right now, I believe it's free trial for users who want to start looking into this. This is the BIM 360 Ops, which is the operations tool. So once you get through design and construction and you hand the building over to the owner, there's this ops platform that is sort of, I would say, in its infancy, or maybe early childhood development, perhaps.
Right.
But the goal of this is that in the future, and even right now to some limited degree, owners can start taking a look at this data, and instead of having to go to a completely separate building management system, they could leverage ops to kind of help with that transition.
Yeah, so it's a great point about ops, and I did talk about operations and maintenance like it was a far off future thing, but you're absolutely right. We do have BIM 360 ops, and the way we develop our software, Shawn, is we work, we select a handful of customers and we work very, very closely with them to build out the capabilities. So we did that. We did exactly that with BIM 360 ops, and right now we have only three customers that we're working with to continue to build out, the data set, if you will. And what's interesting, if you look at those three customers, they come from very, very different industries. One is a university here in Boston. The other is a children's hospital. And the third, which I find fascinating, is one of the major general contractors across Europe. And what's interesting about the third case is, they're using BIM 360 ops because what they started doing about 4 years ago is started offering facilities management capabilities to their clients. So they would build the project, and then they would have an agreement to manage that building once it was commissioned. So what's interesting is, so they're using BIM 360 through the construction process, and then that asset information and model information from BIM 360 field, et cetera, moves right into ops. So yeah, we actually do have some customers using BIM 360 ops in a production environment.
That's a fantastic opportunity for a GC, the ability to build the structure in the first place, to construct everything, know that it's working, and then offer as sort of an added bonus and sort of a guarantee almost of operability is their services to help maintain it into the future. Who better? Because they know the systems, they can fix them faster if they break, and if they break, it's on their head to fix it. So, I mean, that's a great guarantee. It's like having the person who builds your house constantly be the guy who fixes it in the future if something goes wrong.
It's exactly right.
It's an insurance policy. Come on, it's great.
It is, so it's a win-win, because I think for the owner, it's as you just described, and for this large GC, I can tell you their margins in this part of their business are 25% margins relative to the rest of their construction business, which is 2 or 3%. So a pretty interesting opportunity for sure.
What a great revenue source! Another added revenue source for some of those contractors in the U.S. who are kind of looking to expand their offerings.
Exactly.
Also, it's kind of if you build, now this is kind of a different theory here, but if you build the building correctly, it's sort of passive income. I mean, if you're billing for a service and you have nothing to fix, because at least in the first, hopefully 10 years, nothing goes crazy other than just changing some filters. I mean, what a great way to just passively make some money. It's like a subscription.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like they're thinking like Autodesk.
Well, okay, I'm not going to go
It's a
down that
different
path,
thing. It's a
but
different, yeah, we won't go there. So very good. So let's talk about some other stuff that's coming. So what do you see that's exciting you about the world of AEC, building and construction? Like what's coming down the line that's really like groundbreaking that you see that's just fantastic?
yeah. So you know the there are a lot of things, by the way. I could spend an hour. If you talk about big data, if you talk about drone technology, if you
Right.
talk about what the cloud and real-time collaboration, there's so many things that I think are really interesting and they're coming for sure, or they're already starting to be embraced. The
Right.
thing that gets me the most excited, and I could jump further ahead and talk about robotics, things like that. There's what large scale 3D printing, but I'm going to save those for another time because I think the thing that I'm hearing from many of our customers around the globe, and I see, for example, in Europe, a much more accelerated pace, in fact, is around this concept that I mentioned earlier called the industrialization
Right.
of construction, right? So if you look at a lot of the things that the construction industry struggles with or is challenged with today, many of these things are challenges that the manufacturing industry, dealt with and addressed several years ago. And so what we're starting to see is more and more construction companies starting to look at, manufacturing based approaches. And I'm talking specifically around offsite construction or modular construction, panelization. Now, of course, there's been a lot of offsite work in the past. So this is not a completely new topic. Precast concrete. The things that you're seeing here on the screen. A lot of that has been in place, but what's happening is turning these things into a factory and turning them into a manufactured process, if you
Right.
will. So I spent the last year traveling around the globe talking to companies that were either doing things around offsite construction or really exploring it. And, I can tell you one major general contractor, another different major contractor, uh, general contractor, excuse me, in the UK, they've built their own factory. They've got two factories. One is similar to what you see here around precast. The other is around residential. And I can tell you what's fascinating is the person that they've hired to run these factories are from the automotive industries.
Oh,
So
nice.
they're not
Right.
construction professionals. They're from the automotive industry. So for me, this idea of looking to the manufacturing industry to see what are the things that we can learn and apply here. Because, when you build inside, when you do modular, when you do offsite construction, you drive greater predictability, right? Because it's
Right.
an enclosed environment, typically less waste because it's manufacturing driven.
Right.
So, this is an area that we've just started working on, um, particularly around panelization, things like curtain walls. How do you drive a better process around curtain wall manufacturing
Right.
and around modular construction? So we're working with, I talked about this on my main stage presentation at Autodesk University, working with the Nordic Office of Architecture in Europe, and they're working on a major hospital project. And, that's really kind of the pilot for us for our modular effort. So that's that's one of the big things I see coming. There's a lot of great advances in technology coming to AEC, coming to construction, but this industrialization is one that gets me excited. So the video you're seeing here, right? This is from that hospital project. Thank you, Shawn.
Yeah, no worries.
Good timing. And so what's interesting when people think about modular, they think, oh, that means everything's going to look the same. It's going to be square buildings. But what we're doing is we're helping develop tools that allow project teams to actually drive some uniqueness, if you will. So you build that hospital, you design that hospital room once, but you can actually shape it, extend it, etc. And then drive those parameters directly to the shop floor.
Right.
So it's an area that I'm deeply, deeply interested in, and because I think it really hits on those things that I talked about earlier, right?
Right.
You're reducing risk, driving predictability, driving productivity.
Right. And I mean, just thinking about is not that far of a step, really. Right now, even in the world of like medical design, in the world of hospitality, hotel style design or school type design, there's a lot of repeatability in there. Maybe not everything is manufactured offsite, but if you can take those modules, those explicit patient rooms and recovery rooms, or a specific style of hotel room, type A hotel room that's 30 times in the floor plan. I framed a small hotel once with the crew that I used to work on. Man, you're doing the same exact thing in the field over and over again. And it's less efficient because you're running to the saw, you're cutting some stuff, you're bringing it back, you're nailing it in place, you're assembling and erecting your wall. If this was done in a factory and all I was doing as a grunt in the field, so to speak, is taking that pre-assembled room with preset plumbing and everything ready to go, dropping it on site in the correct spot, bolting it down, fixing it to the system, and attaching the electrical and mechanical connections, you're done. That's significantly faster and, like you said, less waste, because now I'm not making mistakes on cuts. I'm not using a hand saw in the field or a handheld skill saw and cutting a board, being a journeyman carpenter, cutting it goofily. And you're in a rush. Come on, man, you can do this so much more efficient if the building was thought out just a little bit ahead of time as a pre-manufactured assembly, and you're designing that way anyway. I mean, you guys are taking groups and linked components of buildings and copying them around. Those are your assemblies.
I I couldn't agree more. It's really well said, and that's the way I feel about it. And if you look at what's happening in the industry, there are some really, really big bets being made. You look at
Oh yeah.
Katera, for example. They have a huge, huge inflow of funding that, make no mistake, they're going to get this right. I had a chance to visit one of their factories a couple of months ago, and they're just getting started, but they're going to figure it out. There's a company in the UK called Bryden Wood. I think they're one of the leaders in terms of this idea of offsite and modular. And like you said, it just makes a whole lot of sense.
Right.
I know as a technology provider, there's a lot we need to do. For example, Revit. Revit, ought to know if you're going to do a project, a modular project, and it's going to be constructed offsite, Revit should help you achieve a design that facilitates that. And it doesn't really do that well today. So that is in fact one of the things we're working on.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, Jim, we're running longer than I was expecting today. We're at about a half hour plus a little bit here. Let's move on to the final little bit here. I told you this earlier on Tuesday. I didn't want to know what you were going to say here, so I'm now going to throw this out there. I like to do this with all of my guests. I'm just curious what people say about this. But given a 2-minute soapbox that you could, have a platform to talk about whatever you want, whatever the topic is, what would you say to the world given this 2-minute soapbox, Jim?
Well, besides saying that the Boston Bruins are going to win the Stanley Cup, and it's been a long time coming.
Right.
I'm going to go back to kind of the industry that we were talking about, and listen, I've been with Autodesk for 20 years. I started out on the manufacturing side, and I'm part of AEC now and have been for the last 17 or so years. And one of the things I tell my project teams or my development organizations is, when we acquired Revit, it was super exciting. When we saw it, we saw the opportunities, we saw the possibilities, and fast forward, and BIM has, thanks to Revit, and Revit's not perfect, and we certainly didn't execute perfect, and looking back, I see the mistakes we made, and if we could do it again, I'd do some things differently. But it was a super, super, super exciting time.
Oh, yeah.
Particularly for architecture and engineering. And what I tell my development teams is what I'm seeing on the construction front, it's 10x in terms of opportunity, in terms of really helping to change, an industry help an industry be more productive, help, change how an industry works. And, that's why I continue to work for Autodesk and why I get up every morning supercharged because I want to be able to look back and say, yeah, I helped play a role in making construction more productive,
Right.
more efficient. And listen, I think the opportunities for all of us are super, super exciting. If you're a contractor, if you're a design team, the role that you can play in changing the way the built world gets designed and constructed, both on the building side and the infrastructure side, we're in for some exciting times. And yeah, so
Absolutely.
that's my soapbox. Is this is not just some technology whiz that's gonna pass us by, and in a year it'll be back to business. This is the future. This is where things are going, and
Yep.
we should all embrace it and move forward with it.
Yeah, I want to add to that a little bit. CTC, the company that I work at for my day job, we saw the same thing. We started with Revit back in 2002, 2003 timeframe, and became a Revit service provider outside of the Autodesk acquisition. Before that even happened, we decided that Revit was a great technology and wanted to move along with it as well. And we followed you with that excitement, that whole Autodesk
Absolutely.
acquisition, and seeing how it developed and became the tool it is today. And I agree. There's some things that we think could have been done a little better or sooner or whatever. But that's what hindsight view is, right? But
Right.
we also are super excited. That's what keeps me going. Also, is the excitement of being able to work with this fantastic technology, designing in new ways, and helping clients become super successful. That's what I do when I'm not doing BIM broadcast. Is I talk with you guys in industry and help you optimize your workflows. And in a lot of cases, that surrounds a lot of the Autodesk platform and the Revit tools. So,
Absolutely.
I'm excited to see where this goes as well.
Excellent.
Jim, thank you for joining me today. Keep up the good work. I like seeing what you guys are doing over there, and I'm excited to see where it's going. Those of you, again, if you have not yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, guys, please do that. Subscribe. You can kind of see new guests as they come on. Hit the little bell notification next to the subscription window. You'll be notified as soon as we do go live, so you can interact with us with great guests like Jim here. So Jim, thank you again. I really appreciate your time.
Shawn, thank you. Great talking to you. Have a fantastic weekend.
Right on, man. We'll catch you later.
Perfect. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yep, bye.